I'm about to tell you something that might shock you. I'm a certified practicing valuer who has built a decent property portfolio, but I made one massive mistake that probably cost me millions of dollars. And the worst part, I had all the knowledge to avoid this mistake. I was literally valuing properties for a living, surrounded by mortgage brokers and property experts. Yet I fell for the biggest lie in Australian property investing. Rent is dead money. You should buy your own home first. Sound familiar? A few years ago, I discovered how some investors were buying their dream homes debt-free, like a $3 million property on the Gold Coast, while still earning over $200,000 in passive rental income every year from their investment portfolios. When I realized this was possible, I turned to my wife and said, why didn't we do that? You see, I followed traditional advice. We built our family home in 2010, and now in our late 40s, we want to upgrade to a bigger home for our growing family. But we're stuck. My wife lost her job 18 months ago and we can't get the capacity that we needed. And if I could start my property investing journey again in my early 30s, I would do everything completely differently. And today I'm going to show you exactly what that would look like. Hi, my name is Dan and I help everyday people like you navigate residential property investing. I show you how to buy high growth, strong yielding assets that could generate income so that you can build a life where work becomes optional, a life where you can focus on what truly matters, spending time with your family, pursuing passions, and helping others without the constant financial stress hanging over your head. I also want to share my property investing journey and the lessons I've learned along the way, both as a property investor and a certified practicing valuer with 15 years of professional experience. And in today's episode, if you're thinking about buying an investment property, but everyone's telling you to buy your own home first, especially when you're young and you've got no real commitments or children, please watch this entire video because I'm about to share what could change your financial future. What I didn't know better. Let me tell you why I've never questioned the buy your own home first advice. I grew up in Singapore with a very traditional Chinese mom. She passed away about 8 years ago, but her voice is still in my head. Then, rent is dead money. Never rent unless you have to. Get married, buy a home, have a family, and pay down your debt. Why would you pay rent and make someone else rich? You see, in Singapore, owning your own home isn't just financial, not just a financial thing. It's a form of cultural programming. It's how you prove you're a successful adult. So when I immigrated to Australia at 30, guess what I did? I followed that programming and built our family home in 2010. But here's the crazy part. Even as a property valuer, everyone around me was saying the same thing. Mortgage brokers, industry peers, friends, family, it was unanimous. Buy your own home first. The problem? Back then, there weren't any visible experts teaching rent vesting. I followed the OGs like Steve McKnight and Michael Yatney, but they weren't pushing this strategy. The younger investors showing massive results today didn't become publicly visible until around 2018, 2020. I was only exposed to one perspective. The successful property investors who were quietly rent vesting, they weren't writing books or doing YouTube videos back then. They were just building wealth quietly behind the scenes. So I followed the only advice I could find, the traditional path. And that's how I ended up making my biggest financial mistake. So what actually is rent vesting? Because there's a lot of confusion. Rent vesting is not just renting. Renting without investing is dead money. My mom was right about that part. Rent vesting is rent where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. Here's a simple example. You want to live near the beach in Melbourne or Sydney. Nice cafes, close to work, good lifestyle. Buying a property there should maybe cost, $1.5 million to $2 million. Your total costs hit around $1,800 per week. Mortgage rates, your council rates, your insurances, maintenance, and none of those things are tax deductible. But you could rent the same lifestyle for $900 to $1,100 a week. That's $800 per week in difference. You can redirect that investment. Here's a simple example. You want to live near the beach in Melbourne, for example. Nice cafes, close to work, good lifestyle. Buying a $1.5 million property there your total cost will hit around $1,800 per week. For example, mortgage, your rates, your insurances, maintenance, and none of it is tax deductible. But you could rent that same lifestyle for $900 to $1,100 per week. That's $800 per week difference. You can redirect that into investment properties that are tax deductible and are building your wealth. Now, this doesn't mean rent in the most expensive area just because you can. The goal is long-term wealth building. Rent affordably where it suits your lifestyle and invest strategically where the growth is, right? Instead of one expensive property growing at maybe 3 to 5% per year, you can take the same deposit and buy multiple investment properties in high growth areas. Like for example, Adelaide, that's been growing for 10% per year. Perth, more than 10%. Regional towns, Townsville, more than 20%. So here's the key insight. Different markets across Australia have very different property cycles. Your wealth grows where you are invested, not where you live. Why wait for years for growth in your suburb when it's happening right now in other locations? So if I were to start again in my early 30s, here are 3 reasons I would rent vest from day one, and how each one could transform your wealth building. Reason number 1, better serviceability through rental income. Now, as a valuer who talks to mortgage brokers regularly, I learned something that completely changed how I think about borrowing capacity. Investment properties generating rental income actually give you better serviceability than buying your own home. Here's why this matters. When you buy your own home, banks calculate the serviceability based entirely on your income, your salary, your after-tax salary. Every dollar of mortgage repayment has to come from the money you've already paid tax on. But with investment properties, the game changes completely. Banks will typically include about 75 to 80% of your expected rental income when calculating how much you can borrow. You're essentially adding another income stream to your serviceability calculation. There are 2 powerful reasons why this gives you more total borrowing capacity. First, let's say you earn $100,000 per year. When buying your own home, that's all the bank counts. But an investment property generating $30,000 in rental income, the bank adds roughly say $20,000 to $25,000 to your income calculation. You've just increased your serviceability income by nearly 25% without working an extra hour of work. Second, and this is huge, investors have access to interest-only loans with lower monthly repayments, and that interest is 100% tax deductible. Owner-occupiers get none of this benefit. So here is how this plays out. Let's say you have borrowing capacity for around $1 million if you were buying a home to live in, but instead you bought 2 investment properties worth $500,000 each with decent rental yields. You could potentially access $1.1 to $1.2 million in total borrowing, sometimes even more. The exact amount varies based on rental yields, your income, and which lender you work with, but the principle holds true. All else being equal, you can typically borrow more total money when you invest. But speak with your mortgage broker because there are nuances to this. Essentially, more borrowing capacity means more properties. More properties means faster equity building. And that brings me to the second reason, location flexibility. Because once you can borrow more and buy multiple properties, you need to understand where you get to live and where you get to invest. Location flexibility means 2 critical things in my eyes: living location flexibility and investment location flexibility. Living location flexibility means when you rent, you get to choose where you want to live based on your lifestyle, desires, your career needs, your proximity to family, whatever matters to you at that stage of your life. You are not tied down. When your lease is up, you can move. Maybe after a year, you realize that that suburb doesn't suit your lifestyle anymore. Or maybe a promotion comes up in another state. You can uproot and go. Back then, when I was building my career, my company offered opportunities in Tasmania and Adelaide, but I couldn't take them because I was emotionally and financially tied to the house I had built. But if you are young and you're building your career, rent vesting gives you an incredible flexibility. Your opportunities shouldn't be limited to where you have have bought your house at 30. But here's the bigger advantage: investment location flexibility. When you reinvest, you get to invest in any location where the data shows strong growth and solid fundamentals. It could be in the same state you're living in, or it could be hundreds of kilometers away in another part of Australia. Here's what matters: your wealth grows according to where you are invested, not where you live. If you had bought your PPOR in an area that only grows 3 to 5% growth rate annually, you're stuck with that growth rate. But if you're renting there and investing in areas at say 8 to 10% annually, you are building wealth significantly faster. Not every market is booming at the same time. Why limit yourself to one location, the one you happen to live in, when you can strategically invest across multiple high growth markets? Let's say you have $180,000 to invest as a deposit. One $900,000 property, let's say your PPOR, growing at 5% per year gives you $45,000 growth per year. But two $450,000 properties using leverage, growing at 8% each year, gives you $72,000 growth per year. And over 5 years, that's a difference between $248,000 in gains in your PPOR versus $423,000 in gains from your investments. That extra $175,000 can be put towards 2 more properties than what you could have afforded using the equity from your PPOR. Reason number 3, tax and cash flow benefits. Now this is a big one for me. Back then, I didn't fully understand the massive tax and cash flow differences between owning your own home versus owning an investment property. This lack of knowledge cost me significantly. When you own your own home, it costs you money each year to maintain it. I'm not just referring to your mortgage repayments, your council rates, water rates, and insurances. I'm talking also about the physical maintenance and repairs to upkeep your property, your home. If I had reinvested, I could have maximize the tax benefits that only investment properties could provide while keeping my cash flow much stronger. The key difference is this: when you own your home, you get 0 tax deductions. You can't deduct your interest on your mortgage, you can't deduct maintenance or repairs or any other cost. It's all out-of-pocket expenses. But with investment properties, you can deduct interest payments, maintenance costs, property management fees, and even the depreciation on the building and fixtures. These deductions reduce your taxable income, meaning you get to keep more of your salary in your pocket. Plus, investment properties have rental income coming in to help cover the costs. Your home just costs you money every month with no income return. Think about it this way: every dollar you spend on your home mortgage is after-tax dollars with no deductions, but the costs associated with investment properties are effectively subsidized by the tax systems through deductions. You are getting more for your buck with every investment dollar compared to every home ownership dollar. So these are the 3 main reasons based on my actual experience as a property professional and someone who made the traditional mistake. So here's my final thought: especially if you are young and just starting out, time is your biggest asset. The earlier you start building wealth through smart property strategies, the more compound growth works in your favor. Don't be trapped by traditional thinking. Question everything, especially advice from people who haven't achieved what you wanted to achieve. Ask yourself these questions: would you rather spend your life catching up on wealth or catching up on your dream home? I wish I asked myself that question in my early 30s. Now, even if you're already owning your home like I am, or you're in your 40s and beyond, there's no condemnation or shame. You can still maximize the equity in your own home like I did. That's where debt recycling comes in. Check out my next video where I talk about debt recycling and how to unlock the equity in your current home to accelerate your wealth building, even if you started late like me. Don't let regret become your teacher. Learn from my mistakes and make better decisions for your financial future. If this video helped you see property investing differently, please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Dan. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next video.